What would you do if the person who tried to kill you was standing at your hospital bedside, pretending to care? Claire Ashford didn't have to imagine. She lived it. 7 months pregnant, pushed through a champagne tower at a Billionaire's gala, emergency C-section, a 3-pound baby fighting for life, and a husband who chose his mistress over his wife. But here's what her attackers didn't know: some women don't break. They rebuild, and they bring everyone down with them. This is the story of how one woman took on a tech empire, exposed a serial predator, and changed the laws to protect others. Subscribe now and comment. Survivor, if you're ready for this journey. Let's begin. Security footage never lies. That is what they told me at the police station 3 days after I woke up in Seattle Medical Center with a 7-inch surgical scar across my abdomen and an empty womb. The detective, a tired woman with kind eyes, rewound the tape for the 4th time. Black and white footage from the Four Seasons ballroom. 500 guests in designer gowns and tailored suits. A pyramid of champagne glasses catching the light like a crystal mountain. And me, 7 months pregnant, falling backward through all of it. "Freeze it there," I whispered, my voice still raw from the breathing tube they had shoved down my throat during emergency surgery. My hand trembled as I pointed at the screen. "Look at her hand, right there on my lower back." The detective leaned closer. On the screen, Vanessa Cole's manicured fingers pressed against the small of my back, just above where my baby pressed against my dress. The timestamp read 9:47 p.m., exactly 13 seconds before my world shattered. "Mrs. Ashford, I see a woman standing near you during what appears to be some kind of team-building exercise. That doesn't prove intent. She pushed me. The footage is inconclusive. Let me rewind further than the security camera can see. Let me take you back 24 hours before the fall, before the blood, before I learned that the man I married was a stranger wearing my husband's face. My name is Claire Ashford, 29 years old, 7 months pregnant, and about to discover that everything I believed about my life was built on lies. It started with a hotel keycard. The morning of the gala, I found it in Brandon's suit pocket while looking for his phone to check our dinner reservation. The Fairmont Olympic Hotel, room 412. I stood in our penthouse bedroom, Space Needle gleaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, holding a small piece of plastic that made my hands shake. "Hey, babe." Brandon appeared in the doorway, fresh from the shower, a towel around his waist. 33 years old, tech billionaire, my college sweetheart, dark hair still wet, the same crooked smile that made me fall in love with him at University of Washington 7 years ago. "You okay? You look pale." I held up the keycard. "What's this?" He barely glanced at it. "Investor meeting last Tuesday. Must have forgotten to return it at checkout." He kissed my forehead, his skin smelling like cedar and lies. "Big day today. IPO celebration. Are you ready?" I wanted to believe him. God, how desperately I wanted to believe him. "Brandon, have you noticed anything different about us lately?" He paused, one hand on his tie. "Different how?" "You're always on your phone, you work late every night. When was the last time we actually talked about something other than your company?" "Claire, we just went public. Ashford Technologies is worth $8 billion now. This is everything we worked for." He cupped my face with both hands. "After tonight, things will calm down. I promise, just get through tonight." That should have been my first warning. When someone asks you to just get through something, they already know it is going to be bad. I spent the afternoon at my nonprofit office in Capitol Hill, teaching literacy skills to underprivileged kids via Zoom. 8 children on screen, ages 6 to 10, struggling to read at grade level. This was my real work. What mattered to me more than any tech IPO or society gala. These kids needed someone who showed up, who kept promises. My best friend Rebecca called during my lunch break. Rebecca Walsh, investigative journalist for Seattle Times, the only person who had known me since before Brandon's money changed and everything. "Tell me you're not actually going to that circus tonight," she said. "I have to. It's important to Brandon. Claire, you're 7 months pregnant. You should be at home with your feet up, not playing trophy wife at some billionaire party." "It's not like that." "Isn't it though? When was the last time Brandon came to one of your nonprofit events? I couldn't answer that. The silence said everything. Just be careful, Rebecca said softly. I've been hearing things about Brandon's company, about his VP of marketing. What things? Nothing concrete yet. But Claire, if you ever need someone in your corner, I'm here. Always. I wish I had listened to her. The Four Seasons Seattle ballroom glittered like the inside of a diamond. 500 guests, a 20-piece orchestra, ice sculptures that cost more than most people's cars. Brandon's IPO celebration was designed to make a statement: we have arrived, and we are untouchable. I wore a navy blue maternity gown that had cost $3,000 and still made me feel like an imposter. My baby kicked against my ribs as we entered, and I pressed my hand to my belly, whispering, almost over, little one. Then it's just you and me. Brandon's hand rested on my lower back as we navigated through the crowd. Tech executives, venture capitalists, journalists. Everyone wanted a piece of Brandon Ashford, the 33-year-old genius who had just taken his artificial intelligence company public and made himself worth $4 billion overnight. Brandon, darling. A woman's voice cut through the orchestra music. I turned to see her gliding toward us in a crimson dress that looked painted onto her body. Vanessa Cole, Brandon's VP of marketing, 32 years old, Princeton MBA, and according to every tech magazine in Seattle, the strategic mind behind Ashford Technologies' meteoric rise. She kissed Brandon on both cheeks, her hands lingering on his shoulders, just a fraction too long. Then she turned to me with a smile that never reached her eyes. Claire, you look absolutely radiant. Pregnancy agrees with you. Her gaze dropped to my swollen belly, and something flickered across her face, not jealousy exactly, something colder. How much longer now? 10 weeks. I said, give or take. You must be exhausted. All those hormones, the swelling, the constant need to pee. I don't know how you do it. She laughed, a crystalline sound that made several nearby men turn their heads. Personally, I could never sacrifice my body like that, but I suppose some women are just built for it. Brandon's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then squeezed my hand. I need to handle something. Vanessa, could you keep Claire company? Of course, Vanessa purred. We girls need to stick together. And just like that, I was alone with the woman who would try to kill me 3 hours later. Vanessa steered me toward the bar, her hand on my elbow, possessive and firm. You know, Claire, Brandon talks about you constantly at the office. Really? He worries about you. Says the pregnancy has been difficult, that you're not yourself lately. She accepted a champagne flute from the bartender, not offering me one. He said you've been emotional, crying a lot, accusing him of things. My chest tightened. What things? Oh, the usual pregnancy paranoia. Thinking he's distant, thinking he's hiding something. She sipped her champagne, watching me over the rim. Men need space. Claire, though, especially men like Brandon. They're not wired for all the emotional heaviness that comes with pregnancy. The constant needs, the physical changes, it can be suffocating for them. I wanted to leave. Every instinct screamed at me to walk out of that ballroom and never look back. But I was tired, 7 months pregnant, and wearing shoes that cost more than my first car. So I stayed. Brandon and I are fine, I said quietly. Of course you are. Vanessa's smile sharpened. That's why he spends 14 hours a day at the office, right? Because everything's so fine at home. Before I could respond, the lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the stage where a microphone stood waiting. Brandon appeared, his smile wide and confident, and the crowd erupted in applause. He spoke about innovation, about disruption, about the future of artificial intelligence. He thanked investors, engineers, his team. Then his eyes found mine across the room. And most importantly, I want to thank my incredible wife, Claire, the woman who believed in me when I was just a kid with a laptop and a dream, the mother of my child, my rock. Claire, come up here. 500 faces turned toward me. Cameras flashed. I felt Vanessa's hand on my back, gentle and encouraging. Go on, she whispered. This is your moment too. I walked to the stage, my baby heavy inside me, my heart pounding. Brandon pulled me close, kissed my cheek for the cameras. The crowd cheered. In that moment, under the lights, I almost believed the lie we were selling. Then I saw it. Brandon's phone, face up on the podium, a text message, notification. Tonight changes everything. I love you, V. My blood went cold. V. Vanessa. Brandon saw me looking. His smile never wavered, but his eyes hardened. He turned me away from the podium, his arm tight around my waist, and whispered in my ear, "Not here, not now." "How long?" My voice cracked. "Claire, please. How long have you been sleeping with her?" His jaw clenched. Around us, guests were still clapping, still taking photos, completely unaware that my marriage was disintegrating in real time. "6 months," he said finally. "It just happened. We were working late, and she understood me in ways you couldn't anymore. You got pregnant and everything changed. You changed." I pulled away from him, my hands shaking, my vision blurring with tears. The baby kicked hard, as if trying to tell me to run. But before I could move, Vanessa appeared on stage with a microphone. "Surprise," she announced. "We have a special team-building exercise planned. A trust fall, because nothing says successful IPO like trusting your team." Right? The crowd laughed. Someone set up a platform. Other couples went first, falling backward into their partner's arms, everyone laughing and filming for Instagram. Then Vanessa called my name. "Claire Ashford, our guest of honor. Come on, don't be shy. Show everyone how much you trust your husband." I shook my head. "I'm pregnant. I can't." "It's perfectly safe," Vanessa insisted. "Brandon will catch you. Won't you, Brandon?" 500 people were watching. Cameras everywhere. Brandon's investors, his board members, the press. I was trapped. I climbed onto the platform. My legs trembled. Below me, Brandon positioned himself, arms outstretched. Behind me, someone was setting up something. I glanced back. A champagne tower. 10 levels of crystal glasses, sparkling under the lights. Why was it there? It hadn't been there for the other couples. "Ready," Vanessa stood beside me, her hand on my lower back. "On 3, 1, 2. She didn't wait for 3. Her palm pressed hard against my spine, shoving me backward with sudden force. I fell, arms pinwheeling, and Brandon reached for me, but his hands closed on empty air. I crashed through the champagne tower, glass exploding around me like a bomb. The sound was incredible, shattering crystal, screaming guests, and underneath it all, a wet tearing sensation across my abdomen as a shard of glass opened me up like a gutted fish. I hit the floor and felt warmth spreading across my dress, red mixing with navy blue. So much red. My baby. Oh God, my baby. The last thing I saw before darkness took me was Vanessa's face above the crowd, her expression carefully arranged into horror. But her eyes were satisfied. Pain brought me back to the world. Not the sharp pain of broken glass, but deeper. A tearing, burning agony that came from somewhere inside my body. Like someone had reached into my abdomen and twisted everything out of place. Fluorescent lights, white ceiling tiles, the smell of antiseptic and blood. "Claire, Claire, can you hear me?" A woman's voice, urgent and kind. I tried to focus. A doctor stood over me, her face blurry. "I'm Dr. Sarah Mitchell. You're at Seattle Medical Center. You've been in an accident. Do you understand?" I tried to speak, but my throat was raw. I managed one word. "Baby." Dr. Mitchell exchanged a glance with someone I couldn't see. "Claire, you have severe lacerations across your abdomen. You're bleeding heavily. The glass punctured your uterus. We need to do an emergency cesarean section right now or we're going to lose both of you." "How far?" I whispered. 30 weeks. Your son will be premature, but he has a fighting chance. Claire, I need your consent. We need to operate now." My son, I hadn't known the gender. We'd wanted it to be a surprise. "Save him," I said. "Whatever it takes, save my baby." "We're going to save both of you," Dr. Mitchell said. But I heard the lie in her voice. She didn't know if she could save both. She was going to have to choose. The anesthesiologist moved into position. Someone squeezed my hand. I turned my head and saw Brandon standing there in his tuxedo, Blood spatters across his white shirt. My blood. Our baby's blood. I'm sorry, Sis. He was crying. Claire, I'm so sorry. This wasn't supposed to happen. You knew, I whispered. You knew what she was. I didn't know she would do this. I swear I didn't know. The anesthesia mask came down over my face. The last thing I thought before the darkness took me was this: if I die on this table, Brandon gets everything. My baby, my nonprofit, my life insurance. He gets to rewrite the story any way he wants. Vanessa wins. I couldn't let that happen. I don't remember the surgery. What I remember is the dream. I was back in our old apartment near the University of Washington, before Brandon's company took off. When we were just two kids in love with more dreams than money. Brandon was cooking spaghetti, burning it like he always did, and I was grading papers at our thrift store dining table. What do you want out of life? He asked me. I want to make a difference. I said, I want to help kids who don't have anyone else fighting for them. What about you? I want to build something that matters, and I want to do it with you. That version of Brandon had been real once. I knew he had. But somewhere along the way, between the venture capital and the IPO and the billions of dollars, I'd lost him. Or maybe he'd lost himself. I woke up in a recovery room with my brother Ethan sitting beside my bed. Ethan Sullivan, former Marine, now a private investigator. 32 years old, 6'3", with our mother's green eyes and our father's stubborn jaw, the only person in the world I trusted without question. Hey, sis? His voice was rough with exhaustion. You scared the hell out of me. The baby, I croaked. He's alive. 3 pounds, 2 ounces. In the NICU. The doctors say he's a fighter. Ethan leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Claire, I need you to tell me exactly what happened at that gala. And don't leave anything out. So I told him. The hotel key card, the text message, Brandon's confession, Vanessa's hand on my back, the push. Ethan's expression grew darker with every word. When I finished, he pulled out his phone and showed me a series of photographs. Brandon and Vanessa entering the Fairmont Olympic Hotel. Different dates, different times, spanning 6 months. Room service receipts, spa treatments for 2. In one photo, taken in the hotel elevator, Vanessa had her arms around Brandon's neck and they were kissing like teenagers. I've been investigating him for 2 weeks, Ethan said quietly. Rebecca called me, said you seemed off, asked me to look into Brandon. I wasn't going to tell you until after the baby was born. Didn't want to stress you out. But Claire, this goes deeper than an affair. He swiped to another photo. Financial records. Bank transfers from Ashford Technologies to shell companies I didn't recognize. $2 million, moved in small increments over the past year. Vanessa's been embezzling from the company, Ethan said. Brandon's been covering for her. I think he's been laundering the money through these fake vendor accounts. I stared at the evidence, my mind struggling to process. Why would he protect her? Because she has leverage. Maybe she threatened to expose the affair. Maybe she's been blackmailing him. Either way, they're in it together now. Ethan took my hand. Claire, that wasn't an accident tonight. She tried to kill you. And if Brandon knew about her past, he let it happen. What past? Vanessa Cole worked at 2 other tech companies before Ashford Technologies. At both places, she had affairs with married executives. At the second company, there was another woman, pregnant, mid-level manager who got promoted over Vanessa. 3 weeks later, that woman fell down a flight of stairs at a company retreat. She miscarried, lost the baby, and ended up in a wheelchair. The room spun. I gripped the hospital bed rail to steady myself. They can't prove it was Vanessa. No, just like they can't prove what happened to you was anything but a terrible accident. Ethan's jaw clenched. But I know the truth. You know the truth. And I'm going to make sure everyone else knows it too. A nurse entered, checking my vitals. Mrs. Ashford, there are some people here to see you. Your parents and your husband. I don't want to see Brandon. Claire, Ethan said gently. You're going to have to face him eventually. And when you do, don't let him know what we know. We need him to think you believe it was an accident. Can you do that? I thought about my son, 3 pounds and fighting for his life, 2 floors above me. I thought about Vanessa Cole walking free, probably already spinning the story to make herself the victim. I thought about how easy it would be to just give up, to let the grief and pain swallow me whole. But I've spent my whole life fighting for kids who didn't have anyone else. Kids who needed someone to show up and refuse to back down. My son needed me to be that person now. Yeah, I said. I can do that. My parents arrived first. Grace and Tom Sullivan, both in their late 50s, looking like they'd aged 10 years in one night. Mom was crying before she even reached my bed. Dad's hands were shaking. Oh, baby girl, Mom whispered, pulling me into a gentle hug that avoided my incision. We got here as fast as we could. Drove straight from Spokane. When Ethan called and said you were in surgery, I thought my heart would stop. Dad stood at the foot of the bed, his face gray. He'd had a stroke last year, and the stress of this was written all over him. How's the little one fighting? I said. 3 pounds. They say the next 72 hours are critical. He's a Sullivan, Dad said firmly. We're fighters. All of us. Brandon appeared in the doorway, and the temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Ethan stood up, his body language turning aggressive. Dad stepped between them. Brandon, Dad said coldly, perhaps you should come back later. I need to see my wife, Brandon said. His eyes were red, his tuxedo shirt untucked and wrinkled. He looked destroyed. Please, just give us a minute. Mom looked at me, and I nodded. My family left reluctantly, but Ethan paused at the door. I'll be right outside. You scream. I come running. Then we were alone, Brandon and me and the ghost of everything we used to be. He collapsed into the chair beside my bed, his head in his hands. I've been sitting in the waiting room for hours. They wouldn't tell me anything. Wouldn't let me see you, I thought I'd lost you. I thought I had lost both of you. You did lose me, I said quietly. The moment you slept with her. Claire, I know I destroyed everything. But you have to believe me. I never wanted this. Vanessa. She was there when I was stressed about the IPE, when I felt like I was drowning in pressure. And you were so focused on the baby and your nonprofit. I felt invisible in my own marriage. So you found someone who made you feel visible again. How original. I ended it 3 weeks ago. I told her it was a mistake, that I wanted to fix things with you. She didn't take it well. But I never imagined she would do something like this. I watched his face carefully. Ethan had taught me how to spot lies, the micro expressions, the tells. Brandon was good, but not perfect. His left hand was clenched in a fist, knuckles white. His breathing was shallow. He was lying about something, but I couldn't tell what. What did she say? I asked. When you ended it, she was angry, said I was making it a mistake, that you didn't understand me like she did. He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. But she accepted it. We agreed to stay professional. I thought it was over. Did you know about her past, the woman at her previous company who fell and lost her baby? Brandon's expression flickered. Surprise, then calculation. No, what are you talking about? Nothing. I said quickly, I'm just trying to make sense of this. The champagne tower, the timing, it all feels too convenient. Claire, listen to me. Brandon leaned forward, taking my hand. I let him, even though my skin crawled at his touch. I've already talked to Marcus Reynolds. He's the best entertainment lawyer in Seattle. We're going to sue Vanessa, the Four Seasons, everyone involved. You're going to get justice. What about the police? I filed a report. They're reviewing the security footage, but Marcus says the criminal case is going to be difficult. It looks like an accident. A terrible, tragic accident. His voice broke. But the civil case, that's where we can really make her pay. Millions. Claire, whatever it takes to make this right. Millions. Not justice, not truth, just money. I need to see our son, I said. The doctor said you need to rest. You lost a lot of blood. They want to keep you in recovery for at least 24 hours. I need to see my baby. Brandon. Something in my voice must have convinced him. He helped me into a wheelchair, careful of my IV lines and catheter. The journey to the NICU felt like miles. Every bump in the hallway sent pain through my abdomen where the stitches pulled. The NICU was dim and quiet except for the beeping of monitors. Tiny isolates lined the walls, each one holding a fragile life. The nurse led us to an isolette in the corner. "This is baby boy Ashford," she said gently. "You can touch him through the ports, but keep it brief. He needs his rest." I looked down at my son and felt my heart crack open. He was impossibly small, smaller than any baby I'd ever seen. Tubes and wires covered his tiny body. A ventilator breathed for him, and his skin was thin enough to see veins beneath, and his eyes were fused shut. He looked like something from another world, too fragile to exist in this one. But his heart was beating. I could see it on the monitor. 160 beats per minute, fighting. I slipped my hand through the port and touched his finger. It was no bigger than a matchstick. Immediately, his tiny hand closed around mine. "Hey, baby," I whispered. "It's Mom. I'm here. I'm right here, and I'm not going anywhere." The nurse smiled. "He knows your voice. Babies recognize their mother's voice from the womb. It calms them. Look at his heart rate. It's already stabilizing." Brandon stood behind me, silent. I didn't turn around. I couldn't look at him while I looked at our son. The two realities couldn't exist in the same space. "What should we name him?" Brandon asked quietly. I'd had a list of names. We both did. We were going to decide together after he was born. But that was before the fall, before the betrayal, before I learned that the man I married was a stranger. "Jackson Usson," I said, "after my grandfather." "Jackson Ashford," Brandon said, testing it. "I like it." "No, Jackson Sullivan Ashford. So he knows where he comes from." I felt Brandon tense behind me, but he didn't argue. He'd lost that right. We sat with Jackson for an hour. The nurse explained his condition: respiratory distress syndrome, underdeveloped lungs, immature digestive system. He would be in the NICU for weeks, maybe months. Every day would be a battle. "But he's strong," she said. "Premature babies born at 30 weeks have about a 95% survival rate in a hospital like ours. He's got good odds." Good odds. My son's life reduced to statistics. When they wheeled me back to my room, Rebecca was waiting. She took one look at me and burst into tears. "I should have stopped you from going to that gala," she said. "I knew something was off about Vanessa. I've been investigating her for a story about hostile work environments in tech. I just didn't have enough evidence yet." "Tell me everything you know," I said. Rebecca glanced at Brandon, who was standing in the doorway. "Maybe we should talk later." "No, now. I want Brandon to hear this too." So Rebecca told us. Vanessa Cole, born Vanessa Brennan in Sacramento, changed her name after the incident at her previous company. The pregnant woman who fell wasn't the only victim. There had been other women, assistants who quit suddenly, interns who filed complaints that disappeared, a pattern of targeting anyone Vanessa perceived as competition or threat. "She's a predator," Rebecca said, "and she's good at it. She knows how to make everything look like coincidence. She's careful, calculating. But Claire, I've talked to 3 of her former colleagues. They'll testify. They'll tell their stories. And will it be enough?" I asked. Rebecca and Brandon exchanged a look. "For a criminal case, probably not. The security footage is ambiguous. Vanessa's lawyers will claim it was an accident, that she was trying to help you. It becomes, he said, she said, or in this case, you said, she said, so she gets away with it." "Not necessarily," Brandon said. "Marcus thinks we have a strong civil case. Negligence, reckless endangerment. The company is liable too. They organized the trust fall exercise. We can go after everyone." "I don't want money," I said. "I want her in prison." "Then we need more evidence," Rebecca said. "Something undeniable. And I'm going to help you find it." After everyone left, I lay in the dark hospital room and stared at the ceiling. My body ached. My breasts were starting to produce milk for a baby who couldn't nurse. My marriage was destroyed. My son was fighting for his life. But I was alive. And as long as I was alive, I could fight. I just didn't know yet how much more I would lose before this was over. The story broke 2 days after the fall. Not the real story. Vanessa's story. I was still in the hospital, learning how to walk again without tearing my stitches, when Rebecca burst into my room with her laptop. "You need to see this. Right now." On screen, Vanessa Cole sat on a cream-colored couch, wearing a soft pink sweater and minimal makeup. She looked vulnerable, young, nothing like the predator in the red dress. The interviewer was Morgan Bradford from Good Morning America. Vanessa, thank you for sitting down with us during what must be an incredibly difficult time. Morgan said, can you walk us through what happened at the gala? Vanessa dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Her voice trembled. It all happened so fast. We were doing this team-building exercise, and Claire seemed excited to participate. But when it was her turn, I noticed she seemed unsteady. I reached out to stabilize her, to help her, but she lost her balance. I watched her fall through that champagne tower, and I just froze. I couldn't believe it was happening. There have been allegations that you pushed Mrs. Ashford. How do you respond to that? It's completely untrue, and frankly, it's devastating that anyone would think that. I adore Claire. I've always admired her work with underprivileged children. The idea that I would intentionally hurt a pregnant woman is beyond comprehension. Vanessa's voice broke. I've been receiving death threats. People are calling me a murderer on social media. My life has been turned upside down because of this terrible accident. Sources close to the Ashford family suggest there may have been tension between you and Claire. Can you address those rumors? Vanessa paused, as if considering her words carefully. I think Claire has been under enormous stress. Pregnancy is difficult, especially for someone who's used to being very active and independent. Brandon mentioned she'd been having some emotional difficulties, mood swings. I wonder if that stress might have contributed to her instability that night. My hands clenched around the laptop. She's calling me crazy. Keep watching, Rebecca said grimly. Morgan leaned forward. There have also been rumors about your relationship with Brandon Ashford. Some witnesses from the gala claim they saw you and Brandon in what appeared to be an intimate conversation earlier that evening. Brandon and I work closely together. We've built Ashford Technologies from the ground up. We have a professional relationship built on mutual respect. Nothing more. Vanessa looked directly into the camera. I think it's important to remember that Claire was drinking at the gala, despite being pregnant. Multiple witnesses can confirm this. I wasn't drinking, I shouted at the screen. I had water and cranberry juice all night. I know, Rebecca said, but she's got 3 people willing to say they saw you with champagne. I've already tracked them down. 2 are Ashford Technologies employees. One is a bartender who was working the event. They're lying, but they're convincing liars. The interview continued. Vanessa painted a picture of an unstable, jealous wife who drank during pregnancy and lost her balance during an innocent team-building exercise. She was the victim here, the misunderstood professional woman being crucified by an irrational pregnant woman and her enablers. By the time the interview ended, #VanessaVictim was trending on Twitter. She's destroying me, I whispered. She's taking everything. Not everything, Ethan said from the doorway. I hadn't heard him come in. She made a mistake. She gave that interview without a lawyer present, and she lied under oath. She wasn't under oath. It was just an interview. No, she was under oath yesterday. The police questioned her. She told them she was 6 feet away from you when you fell. But in the interview, she just said she reached out to stabilize you. Those 2 stories don't match. Ethan pulled out his phone. And I've got something better. Remember how I said I've been investigating? I didn't just look into Brandon. I looked into Vanessa too. He showed me his phone. A recording, audio only, but crystal clear. Vanessa's voice. After tonight, Claire won't be a problem anymore. Brandon's voice. Don't do anything stupid. Vanessa. Vanessa, trust me. Accidents happen at crowded events. Where did you get this? I breathed. Brandon's phone. He left it at your penthouse. I cloned it. Ethan's expression was hard. This was recorded the morning of the gala, 6 hours before you fell. He knew. Brandon knew she was planning something. Maybe. Or maybe he thought she was just talking. Either way, this is premeditation. This is evidence of intent. With this recording and the security footage, we can prove attempted murder. Hope fluttered in my chest for the first time in days. Give it to the police. I can't. I obtained it illegally. If I turn this over, it'll be thrown out of court. Fruit of the poison tree. Ethan sat down beside my bed. But there might be another way. Rebecca, you're a journalist. If this recording was leaked to you by an anonymous source, could you verify it and publish it? Rebecca's eyes lit up. Audio forensics. If it's authentic, which it clearly is, then yes, I can run a story. And once it's public, the police will have to reopen the investigation. Do it, I said. I want everyone to know what she is. But even as we made our plans, I didn't realize how much worse things were about to get. The next morning, Brandon came to my hospital room with his lawyer. Marcus Reynolds was 55, silver-haired, expensive suit, the kind of attorney who charged $1,000 an hour and won cases before they went to trial. Claire, we need to talk about the settlement, Marcus said without preamble. What settlement? The civil suit against Vanessa and the Four Seasons? I've been in negotiations with their legal teams. They want to settle out of court. $25 million. Full medical coverage for Jackson, a trust fund for his care, and a comprehensive NDA. $25 million. I thought about my nonprofit and struggling to raise $50,000 a year. I thought about Jackson and his isolette, facing months of intensive care. I thought about my parents still paying off Dad's stroke medical bills. What's the catch? You sign an NDA agreeing never to speak publicly about the incident. You acknowledge that what happened was a tragic accident with no criminal intent, and you agree not to pursue any criminal charges against Vanessa Cole. No. Brandon leaned forward. Claire, be reasonable. $25 million. That's life-changing money. She tried to kill me. She tried to kill our son. And you want me to sign a paper saying it was an accident? The criminal case is going nowhere. Marcus said, the police have already indicated they're closing the investigation. Insufficient evidence. But with this settlement, you secure Jackson's future, you secure your nonprofit, you secure your parents' retirement. Think about what that money could do. I'm thinking about what it can't do. It can't put Vanessa in prison. It can't stop her from doing this to someone else. Brandon's face hardened. If you don't take this settlement, I'll have no choice but to freeze our joint accounts for legal protection until we sort out what happens with our marriage. You're threatening me while I'm in a hospital bed recovering from being pushed through a champagne tower. I'm protecting our family's assets. If this goes to trial, it could drag on for years. Legal fees alone could be millions. We could lose everything. I laughed, and it hurt my incision. There is no we anymore. Brandon, you destroyed that when you fucked your VP of marketing. Marcus stood. Mrs. Ashford, I urge you to think carefully about this. You have 72 hours to accept or decline the settlement. After that, the offer is withdrawn and you'll be on your own. No legal support. No financial support. I have a lawyer. Do you? Because I checked, and you haven't retained anyone yet. And I should warn you, every top attorney in Seattle has already been approached by Ashford Technologies. Most have conflicts of interest. Finding representation is going to be difficult. They left. I sat in the silence, understanding fully for the first time how much power Brandon had, how much he'd always had. I'd been so focused on building my nonprofit, on helping others, that I'd never thought about protecting myself. I'd trusted him, and trust had almost killed me. Rebecca returned that evening with news. The audio recording has been authenticated. I'm running the story tomorrow morning. It's going to be front page. Seattle Times. Brandon's trying to force me into a settlement. He's freezing my accounts. Rebecca's expression turned fierce. Then we fight. I'll connect you with Kathleen Morgan. She's a civil rights attorney, specializes in corporate abuse cases. She works pro bono for cases she believes in. And Claire, when she hears your story, she's going to believe. What about the death threats Vanessa mentioned? What if this makes things worse? It's going to get worse before it gets better, Rebecca said honestly. But staying silent, letting her win, that's not who you are. You've spent your whole life fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves. It's time to fight for you. She was right. I knew she was right. But I was also terrified. That night, alone in my hospital room, I had my first panic attack. My chest tightened. My breath came in gasps, and I couldn't stop shaking. Nurses rushed in, checking my vitals, worried about my surgical incision. You're having an anxiety attack, one nurse said gently. It's completely normal after trauma. Just breathe with me. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. I tried to follow her rhythm, but all I could see was Vanessa's hand on my back, the champagne tower shattering, the blood. They gave me medication, something to calm me down. I slept for 14 hours. When I woke, my phone was exploding with messages. The Seattle Times story had dropped. Tech VP caught on recording threatening pregnant colleague hours before gala fall. The audio was everywhere. Every news outlet, every social media platform, every tech blog. Vanessa's voice saying Claire won't be a problem anymore played on loop across the internet. Hashtag Vanessa victim was replaced by hashtag Justice for Claire. The Seattle Police Department announced they were reopening the investigation, and Brandon filed for separation. The legal papers arrived by courier while I was in the NICU with Jackson. He was 3 days old, still intubated, still fighting. I'd been sitting beside his isolette for 2 hours, reading him a children's book through the ports, even though he couldn't hear me properly through all the tubes and noise. The courier found me there. Claire Sullivan Ashford. I should have known from how he said my name. Sullivan, my maiden name. Suddenly formal and legal. Yes, you've been served. The envelope contained 3 documents: petition for legal separation, temporary restraining order preventing me from accessing joint assets, and a motion for emergency custody evaluation. What's an emergency custody evaluation? I asked Kathleen Morgan an hour later. She'd come to the hospital as soon as Rebecca called her, 52 years old, black woman with silver locks and eyes that had seen every dirty legal trick in the book. It means Brandon is arguing that you're not fit to care for Jackson, that your mental state is compromised. He's asking for sole legal custody while the separation is pending. Jackson is in the NICU. No one has custody right now except the hospital, but when Jackson is released, he'll go home with someone. Brandon is making sure that someone is him, not you. Kathleen set the papers down. He's using your panic attack against you. The hospital documented it. His lawyers are arguing you're mentally unstable, possibly suffering from postpartum psychosis. I'm not psychotic. I was attacked. I have PTSD. I know, and we'll prove it. But Claire, Brandon is building a case that paints you as an unfit mother. The panic attack, the accusations against Vanessa that couldn't initially be proven. Your refusal to accept a generous settlement. He's creating a narrative where you're irrational and dangerous. I looked through the glass at Jackson, my tiny fighter, hooked up to machines that breathed for him and fed him. 3 pounds, 2 ounces, still losing weight, still critical. What do? We fight, see, and we fight dirty. Kathleen pulled out her laptop. Ethan's been digging into Vanessa's past. Let me show you what he found. The evidence was damning. Vanessa Cole had left a trail of destruction across 3 tech companies, HR complaints, settlements, NDAs. At her second company in Portland, the pregnant woman who fell down the stairs had tried to press charges. The case had been dropped when the woman received $200,000 in an NDA. Ethan tracked her down. Kathleen said, her name is Sarah Bennett. She's willing to talk now. The NDA only prevented her from speaking publicly about the company, not about Vanessa personally. She's been following your story, and she wants to testify. Testify in what? The police haven't charged Vanessa with anything yet. Not yet, but they will. The recording changed everything. The detective assigned to your case called me this morning. They're building a case for attempted murder, but it's going to take time. In the meantime, we focus on the civil case and protecting your custody of Jackson. How Shasham? Psychiatric evaluation. You agreed to one voluntarily. We get ahead of Brandon's narrative. We show that you're processing trauma appropriately, that you're capable of caring for Jackson. The psychiatric evaluation took 4 hours. Dr. Helen Winters was thorough but kind. She asked about my childhood, my relationship with Brandon, my nonprofit work, the fall, the betrayal, the panic attack. How do you feel toward Brandon now? She asked. I feel nothing. I said, when I look at him, I don't see the man I married. I see a stranger who let someone try to kill me. I don't love him anymore. I don't even hate him. I just want him gone. Dr. Winters made notes. And Vanessa Cole, her, I hate her. I want to see in prison. Do you have thoughts of harming her? Every day, but I won't act on them. Because I'm not a monster. I'm just a mother who wants justice. Why are Winters finished her notes. Mrs. Ashford, you're displaying completely normal trauma responses. You're not psychotic. You're not a danger to yourself or your child. You're a woman who was violently attacked and is now being systematically abused by her husband's legal maneuvering. I'll be submitting my report to the court within 24 hours. I started crying and couldn't stop. Relief, exhaustion, fear, everything pouring out. It's okay, Dr. Winters said gently. You are allowed to break. Just don't stay broken. But that night, while I slept in the hospital room they'd given me so I could stay close to Jackson, someone broke into the NICU. Security footage showed a person in scrubs and a surgical mask entering through a side door at 2 a.m. They approached Jackson's isolette, reached inside through the access ports, and adjusted something on his ventilator settings. The alarms went off 30 seconds later. Jackson's oxygen saturation had dropped dangerously low. He'd nearly died. Who was it? I demanded when the police arrived. We don't know yet, Detective Morgan said. She was younger than the previous detective, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. The person knew how to avoid cameras. They knew the NICU layout. This was someone with medical knowledge. It was Vanessa. Ms. Cole has an alibi. She was at home, confirmed by her building security. She didn't leave her apartment between midnight and 6 a.m. Then she paid someone. That's possible. We're investigating all staff who had access. But Mrs. Ashford, I need you to consider another possibility. Detective Morgan pulled out her tablet. Your husband had access to the NICU. He's on the approved visitors list. And he has the strongest motive. What motive? Jackson is his son. Is he? We've been looking into the custody motion. Did you know Brandon has requested an expedited paternity test? He's claiming there's doubt about Jackson's paternity. If the test proves he's not the biological father, he can walk away. No child support, no custody battles. And if something happened to Jackson before that test could be performed, he'd be free, I finished, after she left. I went to the NICU. Jackson was sleeping, his tiny chest rising and falling with the ventilator's help. Someone had tried to kill him. My baby, 4 days old, and already someone wanted him dead. I pressed my hand against the isolette. He stirred, his impossibly small hand reaching toward mine. I'm here, baby, I whispered. Mommy's here, and I'm not going to let anyone hurt you. I promise. My phone rang. Unknown number. Heavy breathing. Then a woman's voice, distorted and mechanical. Stop. Stop talking to the press. Stop investigating. Or next time, Jackson won't be so lucky. The call disconnected. My hands shook as Ethan grabbed the phone, immediately tracing it. Burner phone, routed through multiple VPNs. We need to go to the police, Kathleen said. No. My voice was steady. That's what they want. They want us scared, backing down. Well, I'm not backing down. Claire, someone just threatened your baby's life. And what's the alternative? Sign Brandon's settlement, let Vanessa walk away. I stood. No, we escalate. Rebecca, I want to do another interview. I want to tell the whole story. Everything. Are you sure? Because once you do that, there's no taking it back. I'm sure. Well, Rebecca's apartment became our war room. Kathleen Morgan worked from the dining table, surrounded by legal documents and coffee cups. Ethan had set up an investigation board on one wall, red string connecting photographs and evidence like something from a crime show. And I sat in the middle of it all, feeding breast milk to a pump because my baby couldn't nurse, feeling like I was losing my mind. Let's go through what we know, Kathleen said. Vanessa has an alibi for the night of the NICU incident. Brandon also has an alibi. He was at his parents' house in Bellevue, confirmed by their security system. But someone with medical knowledge accessed that wing. Hired help, Ethan said. Has to be. Either Brandon or Vanessa paid someone to finish the job. Can we prove that? I asked. Not yet, but I'm working on it. Ethan pointed to a photograph on his board. This is Dr. James Murphy, anesthesiologist at Seattle Medical. He's also Vanessa's ex-boyfriend from 2 years ago. Still friendly with her, according to their social media. He had access to the NICU. That's circumstantial, Kathleen warned. We need more than social media likes to prove conspiracy. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello. Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a woman's voice, distorted somehow. Mechanical. Stop. Stop talking to the press. Stop investigating. Or next time, Jackson won't be so lucky. The call disconnected. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped the phone. Ethan grabbed it, immediately started tracing the call. Burner phone, routed through multiple VPNs. Whoever this is, they know what they're doing. We need to go to the police, Kathleen said. No. I was surprised by how steady my voice sounded. That's what they want. They want us scared, backing down. Well, I'm not backing down. Claire, Mom, Rebecca said carefully. Someone just threatened your baby's life. And what's the alternative? Signed Brandon's settlement. Let Vanessa walk away. Watch my son grow up knowing his mother gave up. I stood, adrenaline replacing the fear. No, we escalate. Rebecca, I want to do another interview. I want to tell the whole story. Everything. Are you sure? Because once you do that, there's no taking it back. I'm sure. The interview aired 3 days later. Primetime, local news, 30 minutes of me telling America what really happened. I showed my surgical scar on camera. I held photographs of Jackson in his isolette, 3 pounds of baby covered in tubes. I played the audio recording of Vanessa threatening me, and I named Brandon as a co-conspirator. My husband knew Vanessa Cole was dangerous, I said, looking directly into the camera. He knew about her past. He knew she had threatened me, and he did nothing. He let me walk into that gala like a lamb to slaughter because protecting his company was more important than protecting his wife and child. The interviewer, Karen Ross, leaned forward. That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof? I have his silence. I have his immediate move to freeze my assets. I have his custody motion. I have a husband who's doing everything in his power to protect Vanessa Cole instead of seeking justice for his son. I paused. And I have witnesses who will testify that Brandon and Vanessa planned to force me out of the company and our marriage long before the gala. That last part was a bluff. We didn't have those witnesses yet, but Ethan had a theory that if we made Brandon and Vanessa think we had more evidence than we actually did, someone would crack. The interview went viral. Within hours, #Brandon Ashford was trending. Tech journalists started digging into Ashford Technologies' corporate structure. Employees started talking to reporters on background. Anonymous sources describing a toxic culture where Vanessa Cole ran the company like her personal fiefdom. And then the SEC announced they were opening an investigation into potential securities fraud at Ashford Technologies, the embezzlement Ethan had discovered. It turned out to be deeper than anyone realized. Vanessa hadn't stolen $2 million. She'd stolen $25 million. Cooking the books so thoroughly that even the company's CFO hadn't caught it. And she'd done it with Brandon's knowledge and approval. The stock price collapsed, 40% in one day. Shareholders filed lawsuits. The board called an emergency meeting, and Brandon called me at 2 a.m, drunk and crying. You destroyed everything, he slurred. 8 years of work, 8 years of building something that mattered, and you destroyed it in one interview. You destroyed it when you chose her over me, I said coldly. This is just the consequences catching up. I loved you. Did you know that I really loved you once? Not enough. What do you want from me, Claire? You want me to grovel. You want me to say I'm sorry. Fine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I cheated. I'm sorry I was weak. I'm sorry for all of it. Just make it stop. Please, make the investigation stop. I can't. I wouldn't even if I could. They're going to arrest me. The SEC found emails between Vanessa and me about the embezzlement. I helped her hide it because I thought we could fix it quietly, but they're calling it conspiracy. I could go to prison. Claire, good, I thought. But what I said was, then you should get a better lawyer. Jackson isn't mine, is he? The question hung in the air between us. I'd been wondering when he'd ask. The paternity test had been processed 3 days ago. The results were sealed, pending the custody hearing. Why would you think that? I asked carefully. Because you're fighting so hard to keep him away from me. Because you won't let this go. If he was mine, you'd want me in his life. You'd want him to have a father. He has a father. You're just not acting like one. I saw the test results, Brandon said quietly. I have a friend who works at the lab. He gave me an advanced copy. Jackson has my DNA. He's mine. And Claire, I'm going to take him from you because you left me no choice. The call ended. I sat in the dark, my heart pounding. Brandon knew Jackson was his son, but he was still fighting for custody, which meant this wasn't about love or family. This was about winning. The custody hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. In the meantime, Jackson improved enough to come off the ventilator. He still needed oxygen support, still needed feeding tubes, but he could breathe on his own. Small victories. I spent every day in the NICU. Kathleen filed motions, Ethan investigated, Rebecca wrote articles, and slowly, we built our case. Sarah Bennett, the woman from Vanessa's previous company, flew to Seattle. She sat in Rebecca's apartment and told us everything. I was 8 months pregnant when Vanessa started targeting me. Sarah said she was 38 now, with sad eyes and a cane she needed after the fall. I'd been promoted to senior director over her. She'd wanted that position. She couldn't believe they'd give it to a pregnant woman instead of her. What did she do? I asked. Little things at first, leaving me off important emails, scheduling meetings when I was at doctor's appointments, spreading rumors that I was getting special treatment because of my pregnancy. Then the accidents started. Accidents. My car tires were slashed in the company parking lot. Someone put peanut butter in my lunch, even though my severe allergy was well documented in HR. Files disappeared from my computer. It was like she was trying to drive me crazy. Did you report it? Multiple times, HR did nothing, said it was interpersonal conflict, that I needed to work it out with Vanessa directly. So I tried, I went to her office, tried to clear the air. She smiled at me and said, things have a way of working themselves out. Sometimes people who are in the way just move. That sounds like a threat. I thought so too, but I had no proof. Then came the company retreat. Team building exercises at a lodge in the mountains. There was a staircase, open design, 2 stories. I was coming down with my laptop bag. Vanessa was behind me. I felt her hand on my back. Sarah's voice broke, just like you described. A push. I fell 15 stairs, broke my back, fractured my pelvis, lost my baby girl at 34 weeks. I reached across the table and took her hand. We sat there, 2 women connected by the same monster, and we didn't need to say anything. She understood what I'd been through. I understood her pain. The company settled for $200,000, Sarah continued. I was so broken, physically and emotionally. My marriage didn't survive the grief. I just wanted it to end. So I took the money and signed the NDA. I've regretted it every day since. You're willing to testify, Kathleen asked, about what Vanessa did to me personally? Yes. The NDA only covers the company, not criminal proceedings. If your DA will listen, I'll tell him everything. This was it. This was the corroboration we needed. Sarah's testimony proved pattern and intent. Combined with the audio recording and the security footage, we could build a real case. But we needed one more thing. We needed someone to flip. Someone close to Vanessa who would testify against her in exchange for immunity. And Ethan knew exactly who that person was. Dr. James Murphy lived in a high-rise apartment in downtown Seattle with a view of Elliott Bay. Ethan and I showed up at his door at 7 in the morning with coffee and a proposition. I'm not talking to you, Buffett, Murphy said when he saw us. 42 years old, tired eyes, the look of a man who hadn't been sleeping well. Then just listen, I said. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking. He let us in reluctantly. The apartment was immaculate, everything in its place, but there was an emptiness to it. No photographs, no personal touches, the home of someone who didn't really live there. The police are going to arrest you, Ethan said without preamble. They have surveillance footage of someone in scrubs entering the NICU the night Jackson's ventilator was tampered with. They're running biometric analysis on the gait pattern. It's only a matter of time before they match it to you. Murphy's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. Vanessa called you. She told you it would be easy. Just a simple adjustment. No one would ever know. She probably promised you money, or maybe she threatened you. Either way, you did it. And now you're going to prison for attempted murder unless you cooperate. I want a lawyer. Smart. You should definitely get one. But before you do, you should know that Vanessa is already cooperating with the SEC. She's giving them everything. Emails, bank records, conversations with Brandon about the embezzlement. She's saving herself and throwing everyone else under the bus. This was another bluff. Vanessa wasn't cooperating, but Murphy didn't know that. She wouldn't, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. She absolutely would, I said, because that's who she is. She uses people and discards them, just like she used you, just like she used Brandon. And when the police come for you, do you really think she's going to stand by you? Murphy sat down heavily on his pristine couch. I didn't want to hurt the baby. I swear. She told me it would just scare you, make you back off. She said the ventilator adjustment would trigger an alarm, but no real harm would come to him. My son almost died, I said quietly. His oxygen saturation dropped to 60%. Another 30 seconds, and he would have had brain damage. Or worse, I didn't know, God, I didn't know it would be that serious. Murphy put his head in his hands. She has a way of making things sound reasonable, of making you think you're helping. I was in love with her once. Maybe I still am. And she knew that. She exploited that. Tell the police, Ethan said, poked. Tell them everything. They'll offer you a deal. Testify against Vanessa, and you'll do minimal time. Refuse, and you're looking at 20 years for attempted murder of an infant. If I testify, she'll destroy me. She has connections. She'll make sure I never work in medicine again. She's going to prison, I said. She can't hurt you from prison. Murphy looked at me for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone and called his lawyer. 3 hours later, he was at the police station giving a full confession. He wore a wire to his next meeting with Vanessa, got her on tape admitting she'd asked him to handle the Jackson situation. And just like that, the case against Vanessa Cole became airtight. She was arrested that evening. Perp walk, cameras everywhere. Her lawyer trying to shield her face. She was charged with attempted murder of a minor, conspiracy to commit murder, embezzlement, and securities fraud. Bail was set at $5 million. She couldn't make it. She spent the night in King County Jail. The news cycle exploded. Every outlet ran the story. Tech VP arrested for attempted murder of colleague's baby. The details were sensational. The audio recordings damning. Public opinion turned definitively against her. But the fight wasn't over yet. Brandon fired his entire legal team and hired new attorneys. Kathleen got a call from them the next day. They wanted to negotiate. He's offering you everything, Kathleen said. Full custody of Jackson, 60% of all marital assets, which at this point is about $2.4 billion after the stock collapse. Continued health insurance, a formal apology. Everything you wanted. In exchange for what? Your silence. He wants you to issue a public statement saying he wasn't involved in Vanessa's crimes, that he was deceived just like you were. He wants to rehabilitate his image. Absolutely not. Claire, listen to the rest. He's willing to testify against Vanessa. Full cooperation with the prosecution. He'll give them every email, every text, every piece of evidence that proves her guilt. With his testimony, Vanessa will never see freedom again. I thought about Jackson, growing stronger every day in the NICU. I thought about my nonprofit and all the good that $2 billion could do. I thought about never having to see Brandon again, never having to co-parent with a man who'd let someone try to kill me. What exactly would I have to say in this statement? Just that you believe Brandon was manipulated by Vanessa, that he made mistakes, but he wasn't criminally involved. It's technically true. The SEC investigation found no evidence that Brandon knew about the embezzlement until after it happened. He helped cover it up, which was illegal, but he didn't steal the money. He knew she was dangerous. He had the recording of her threatening me, and he did nothing. The recording doesn't prove he understood it as a real threat. His lawyers will argue he thought she was just venting. It's weak, but it's plausible enough to create reasonable doubt. I looked at Kathleen. What do you think I should do? I think you need to decide what justice looks like to you. Do you want Vanessa in prison? Because this deal guarantees that. Do you want financial security for Jackson? This guarantees that too. Do you want Brandon to suffer? Well, he's lost his company, his reputation, and half his wealth. That's not nothing in. But he gets to walk away. He gets to rebuild. And everyone will think he was just another one of Vanessa's victims. Maybe he was, Kathleen said gently. Or maybe he was a weak man who made terrible choices. Either way, holding out for the perfect justice means risking getting no justice at all. Criminal cases are hard to win. Juries are unpredictable. If we go to trial against Brandon, we might lose. And if we lose, he could end up with custody of Jackson. Is that a risk you're willing to take? I went to the NICA to think. Jackson was awake. His eyes opened for the first time. They were blue, unfocused. But looking in my general direction, the nurse said he could probably see shapes, light and dark. "Hey, baby," I whispered. "What do we do? What's the right choice?" He couldn't answer. Of course. But looking at him, I realized something. This wasn't about revenge. This was about building a life where Jackson could thrive, where I could heal, where we could both move forward. Vanessa going to prison was justice. Brandon losing his company and his reputation was consequence. Maybe that had to be enough. I called Kathleen from the NICU hallway. "Take the deal," I said. "But I have one condition. I want Brandon to establish a foundation in Jackson's name. $25 million, dedicated to supporting survivors of workplace violence and assault, and I want to run it." "I'll propose it," Kathleen said. "But Claire, that's a lot of responsibility. Are you sure you want to be tied to Brandon's money like that?" "It's not his money anymore. It's justice. And I'm going to use it to make sure what happened to Sarah, to Mia, to every woman Vanessa hurt, never happens to anyone else again." The deal was finalized a week later. I issued the statement, carefully worded and legally vetted. Brandon's lawyers ran it past their PR team. The media ran stories about complicated truth and two victims of a manipulative predator. I hated every word of it, but I signed the papers anyway. Vanessa Cole's trial began on a gray October morning, 6 months after the gala, 4 months after Jackson came home from the NICU. He was sitting on my lap in the courtroom gallery, 7 months old now and healthy, reaching for everything with chubby hands. Rebecca sat beside me, her hand on my shoulder. Ethan was 3 rows back, his eyes never leaving Vanessa's table. Sarah Bennett had flown in from Vancouver, and in the front row, Brandon sat with his new legal team, ready to testify. Vanessa looked different. Her red hair was pulled back in a severe bun. She wore a gray suit, minimal makeup, wire-rimmed glasses she didn't need. The performance of a professional woman being railroaded by a jealous wife. But her eyes, when they met mine across the courtroom, were pure hate. The prosecution's opening statement was devastating. They played the audio recording. They showed the security footage, frame by frame, demonstrating how Vanessa's hand positioned on my back created forward momentum that launched me into the Champagne Tower. They brought in an accident reconstruction expert who testified that the fall was biomechanically impossible without external force. Then they called their first witness, Dr. James Murphy. He looked terrible, thinner, older, haunted. He'd lost his medical license during plea negotiations, agreed to testify in exchange for 3 years in minimum security prison. His career was over. "Dr. Murphy, can you describe your relationship with Vanessa Cole?" the prosecutor asked. "We dated for 8 months, 2 years ago. She ended it when I wanted to get serious, wanted to move in together. She said she wasn't ready for that kind of commitment." "Did you maintain contact after the relationship ended?" "Casual. We'd text sometimes. She'd call when she needed something." "What did she need in September of last year?" Murphy's voice dropped. "She called me at midnight, said Claire Ashford was trying to destroy her career, said Claire was making false accusations, that she needed protection. She asked if I'd help her." "Help her how?" "She wanted me to go to the NICU where Claire's premature baby was being treated. She wanted me to adjust the ventilator settings to trigger an alarm. She said it would just scare Claire, make her back off." "Did you do it?" "Yes." Murphy's voice cracked. "I did it, and I've regretted it every day since." The defense attorney, a shark named Gerald Price, went after Murphy on cross-examination, tried to paint him as a scorned ex-lover with an axe to grind, tried to suggest he'd acted alone. out of jealousy or obsession. But Murphy held firm. I loved Vanessa. I would have done anything for her. That's why I did what she asked. And that's why I know she's guilty. Next came Sarah Bennett. She told her story. The falls, the miscarriage, the settlement. The courtroom was silent except for her voice and the sound of Jackson babbling softly in my arms. After I lost my baby, I lost everything, Sarah said. My marriage, my career, my ability to walk without pain. Vanessa Cole took my entire life from me, and she almost got away with it. Gerald Price tried to discredit her, too. Miss Bennett, you signed an NDA that specifically stated your fall was an accident. Why should we believe you now when you claimed then that no one was at fault? Because I was broken and traumatized and they gave me money to go away. But taking money doesn't change what happened. It just means I was too weak to fight back then. I'm not weak anymore. Then came Brandon. He looked older, worn down. The billionaire confidence was gone, replaced by something smaller. He'd been stripped of his CEO title, forced to sell his stock, and was currently fighting multiple lawsuits from shareholders. The golden boy of Seattle tech was tarnished beyond repair, but his testimony was solid. He corroborated everything: the affair, the recording, Vanessa's manipulation. He claimed he'd been blind to her true nature, that he'd thought she was just ambitious and driven, not dangerous. Mr. Ashford, the prosecutor said, did you know Vanessa Cole planned to harm your wife at the gala? No. If I had known, I would have stopped her. Claire is the mother of my child. Despite our problems, despite the divorce, I never wanted her hurt. I watched him lie under oath and said nothing, because the deal was done. His testimony would put Vanessa away. That was what mattered. Finally, I was called to testify. I handed Jackson to Rebecca and walked to the stand, put my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. The whole truth. Nothing but the truth. The prosecutor walked me through the night of the gala, the trust fall, the push, the glass, my emergency C-section, waking up to find out someone had tried to kill my baby. Mrs. Ashford, why do you believe Vanessa Cole intentionally pushed you? Because I felt her hand on my back. Because I heard her say, after tonight, Claire won't be a problem anymore. Because she'd done it before to another woman. Because she's a predator who destroys anyone she perceives as competition. Gerald Price's cross-examination was brutal. He asked about my mental health, my panic attacks, my accusations that couldn't initially be proven. He tried to paint me as an unstable woman with a vendetta. Mrs. Ashford, isn't it true that you refused a $25 million settlement? What reasonable person would turn down that kind of money unless they had ulterior motives? My motive was justice. Money doesn't bring justice. Vanessa Cole in prison brings justice. Or perhaps you wanted revenge. Perhaps you wanted to destroy your husband's company out of spite. I wanted the truth. I wanted people to know what she did. I wanted other women to be safe from her. By your own admission, you were drinking at the gala despite being 7 months pregnant. That's a lie. I had water and cranberry juice. The witnesses who claimed they saw me drinking champagne were paid by Vanessa to lie. Can you prove that? Yes. My lawyer has bank records showing payments from Vanessa's personal account to those witnesses 2 days after the gala. The amounts match exactly what they each received. Gerald Price's expression flickered. He hadn't known about those records. Vanessa had hidden them from her own legal team. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Vanessa's face crumbled when the verdict was read. She looked at Brandon, pleading, but he looked away. She looked at me, and I held her gaze without flinching. You did this, she mouthed. No, I mouthed back. You did. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. The judge gave her 15 years for attempted murder, 5 years for conspiracy, 10 years for embezzlement, all to run consecutively, 30 years total. She was 32 years old. She'd be 62 when she got out. If she ever got out, good behavior wasn't Vanessa's strong suit. As they led her away in handcuffs, she screamed at me. This isn't over. I'll appeal. I'll get out, and I'll finish what I started. The bailiffs dragged her from the courtroom. Jackson started crying at the commotion. I held him close, whispering, It's okay, baby. The bad lady can't hurt us anymore. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Rebecca had prepared a statement for me to read. Today, justice was served. Vanessa Cole will spend decades in prison for her crimes. But this victory isn't just mine. It's for Sarah Bennett, and for every woman who's been targeted, silenced, or hurt by someone in power. It's for every mother who's had to fight to protect her child. And it's a reminder that the truth always comes out eventually. You just have to be brave enough to tell it. The reporters shouted questions. I ignored them all and walked to the car where Ethan was waiting with Jackson's car seat. You did good, sis, he said. I did what I had to. What's next? I looked down at Jackson, who'd fallen asleep in my arms. We go home, we heal, and we live. 1 year later, the Jackson Sullivan Foundation occupied 3 floors of a renovated building in Capitol Hill, $25 million in funding. Dedicated to supporting survivors of workplace violence and assault, we provided legal aid, counseling, job placement, everything needed to rebuild a life after trauma. I stood in my office, looking out at the Seattle skyline. Space Needle in the distance, the same view I'd had from the penthouse I used to share with Brandon. But this view was mine, earned, not given. Claire, Rebecca poked her head in. The speaker for today's event just arrived. Be right there. Today we were hosting our first annual Survivors Conference. 200 women, all navigating the aftermath of workplace assault, harassment, or violence. Sarah Bennett was our keynote speaker, now the Foundation's Director of Survivor Advocacy. I grabbed Jackson from his playpen. 14 months old now, taking his first wobbly steps, saying mama and no with equal enthusiasm, ready to charm some donors. I asked him. He grabbed my nose. No, that's my boy. Sarah's speech was powerful. She talked about trauma, survival, and the long road to healing, about how speaking the truth saved her life. I lost my daughter. I lost my marriage. I lost years of my life to pain and grief. But I didn't lose myself. And neither will you. Because we are survivors. We are fighters. And together, we are unstoppable. The room erupted in applause. Jackson clapped too, even though he didn't understand why. I stood in the back, tears streaming down my face. After the conference, a young woman approached me, 24, nervous, wringing her hands. Mrs. Miss Sullivan. Claire is fine. I work at a tech company. My supervisor has been inappropriate, touching my shoulder, making comments about my body. I reported it to HR and they did nothing. Now he's threatening to fire me if I keep complaining. She was crying. I don't know what to do. I handed Jackson to Rebecca and turned my full attention to this woman. What's your name? Emma. Emma Larson. Emma, you did the right thing by reporting it. Now you're going to document everything. Every inappropriate comment, every touch. Every time HR dismissed your complaint. And then you're going to let my foundation's legal team represent you. Pro bono. We're going to make sure your supervisor faces consequences. Emma's eyes widened. Really, you'd do that? That's why we exist. I gave her my business card, watched her walk away with her shoulders a little straighter. Her head held a little higher. I thought, this is why I fought. That evening, I took Jackson to the NICU at Seattle Medical. We did this every month, visiting the babies and families, going through what we'd gone through. I'd started a support group for parents of premature infants. Nurse Mitchell, the doctor who'd saved our lives, found me in the hall. Claire and Jackson, look how big he's getting. Jackson babbled at her and reached for her stethoscope. How's the foundation going, she asked. Growing every day. We're up to 35 employees now. We've helped over 500 women in the first year. That's incredible. And when you were here fighting for your life, I didn't know if you'd make it. But look at you now. You didn't just survive. You thrived. Thrived. A year ago, I'd been broken and bleeding, not sure if I'd live to see my son grow up. Now I was running a multi-million-dollar foundation, helping other women find their way out of darkness. My phone buzzed. Text from Ethan. Brandon's in town. Wants to see Jackson. Says he'll meet wherever you want. I texted back, Discovery Park. Tomorrow at 2. The next day, I pushed Jackson in his stroller through Discovery Park's beach trail. Brandon was already there, sitting on a driftwood log, looking out at the water. He stood when he saw us. Hey, hey, Jackson saw Brandon and shrieked, Dada! He'd started calling any man with dark hair Dada. Brandon's face crumpled. He knelt down as I lifted Jackson from the stroller. Hey, buddy, remember me? Jackson studied him seriously, then grabbed his glasses. Still strong, Brandon said, laughing weakly. He looked up at me. He looks good, healthy. He is, finally caught up to his developmental milestones. We sat on the log, Jackson between us, playing with rocks. The silence stretched. I saw the news about the foundation, Brandon said finally. 500 women helped. That's amazing, Claire. It's what the money should have been used for all along. I'm sorry. I know I've said it before, but I'm sorry for all of it. Are you sorry you did it, or sorry you got caught? He considered that. Both, probably. I can't separate them anymore. At least you're honest about it. Jackson toddled toward the water. I grabbed him before he could get his shoes wet. He laughed, thinking it was a game. He has your laugh, Brandon said softly. He has your stubbornness. I'm dating someone, Brandon said as we were leaving. Her name is Amanda. She's a third-grade teacher. I wanted you to know before Jackson mentions it. Does she know about what happened? Everything? I told her everything on our second date, he shrugged. She didn't run, said everyone deserves a second chance if they've learned from their mistakes. Have you learned from your mistakes? I'm trying, every day. I'm trying. I put Jackson back in his stroller. Brandon, I don't hate you. I'm angry at you. Probably always will be. But I don't hate you. You're Jackson's father. He deserves to have you in his life, if you're willing to show up. I will be, I promise. Don't promise, just do it. He nodded. Can I see him again next month? Yeah. Text Ethan to set it up. I walked away, pushing Jackson toward the parking lot. I didn't look back. The past was behind us, painful and impossible to change. But ahead was possibility. That night, I put Jackson to bed in our townhouse in Wallingford. I read him his favorite book, the same one I'd read to him in the NICU. Good night, Moon. Night, night, Mama, he said, his eyes already closing. Good night, baby. Mommy loves you. After he fell asleep, I went to my home office. The wall was covered with photos. Me and Jackson at his first birthday, Sarah and me at the foundation ribbon cutting, Rebecca, Ethan, and me at Jackson's NICU graduation day. And in the center, a photo from the trial, me on the courthouse steps, reading my statement, Jackson in my arms. Behind me, Ethan and Rebecca and Kathleen, my army. Someone had caught me mid-sentence. And in that frozen moment, I looked strong, certain, unbreakable. I didn't feel unbreakable. I felt scarred and tired and still healing. But maybe that was okay. Maybe strength wasn't about being invincible. Maybe it was about breaking and putting yourself back together and choosing to keep going anyway. My laptop chimed. Email from Emma Larson. Dear Claire, I wanted to update you. Your legal team met with my company's executives today. Within 2 hours, my supervisor was fired. HR is being completely restructured, and they offered me a promotion and a formal apology. Thank you for showing me I didn't have to accept being treated like that. You changed my life. I read the email 3 times. This was why I'd survived. Not for revenge, not even for justice, but for this, for showing other women that speaking up was possible, that surviving was possible. Before bed, I checked on Jackson one more time. He was sprawled in his crib, peaceful and safe. 3 pounds of miracle. Now 25 pounds of toddler chaos. We made it, I whispered. We really made it. I'd spent so much of my marriage trying to be enough for Brandon, trying to fit into his world. But I was enough. I'd always been enough. The problem was never me. My phone buzzed one last time. Text from an unknown number. Is this Claire Sullivan? My name is Jennifer Morrison. I'm an executive at Microsoft. I heard about your work with survivors. There's a situation at my company, and I need help. Can we talk? I looked at the message for a long moment. Then I typed back, yes, tell me everything. Because this was my life now. Showing up, fighting back, refusing to let anyone else fall the way I had. I turned off the light and climbed into bed, alone but not lonely, scarred but healing, broken once but rebuilt stronger. Tomorrow, I would help Jennifer, and the day after, someone else, and the day after that, another woman who needed to know she wasn't alone. Vanessa had tried to destroy me. Brandon had let her, but I was still here, still standing, still fighting, and I wouldn't stop until every woman knew that survival was possible, that justice was worth fighting for, that their voices mattered. I closed my eyes and slept without nightmares for the first time in a year.